Good evening, and welcome back to Night Rhythm. Tonight, we examine insomnia, not as a vague complaint, but as a measurable sleep disorder with identifiable causes and proven treatments. Many people experience restless nights, yet not all insomnia is the same. Some cases last days, others persist for years. Understanding the difference between acute insomnia and chronic insomnia is the first step toward restoring stable sleep. In this episode, we will clarify how insomnia develops, how clinicians distinguish temporary disruption from long-term disorder, and which evidence-based methods consistently improve sleep. Along the way, you will learn practical techniques, adjustments in timing, environment, and behavior that can be applied immediately. Sleep is not luck. It is a biological rhythm that can be stabilized. Insomnia is defined as persistent difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or returning to sleep after waking, despite adequate opportunity for rest. Importantly, the diagnosis also requires daytime consequences, such as fatigue, impaired concentration, mood instability, or slowed reaction time. Occasional poor sleep alone does not meet the clinical threshold for insomnia disorder. Researchers divide insomnia into two major categories: acute insomnia and chronic insomnia. Acute insomnia typically lasts less than 3 months and is often triggered by stress, travel, illness, or environmental change. Chronic insomnia, by contrast, occurs at least 3 nights per week for 3 months or longer, and usually involves behavioral or neurological patterns that reinforce wakefulness. Acute insomnia is extremely common. Surveys suggest that up to 30% of adults experience short-term insomnia in a given year. In most cases, the condition resolves once the triggering stressor subsides. However, if coping strategies inadvertently disrupt sleep routines, the short-term problem can transition into chronic insomnia. One of the most important biological systems involved in insomnia is the interaction between circadian rhythm and sleep pressure. Circadian rhythm determines when the body prefers to sleep, while sleep pressure accumulates throughout the day as the brain uses energy. When these two signals align, sleep onset becomes smooth and predictable. Insomnia often begins when these systems fall out of alignment. For example, extended time in bed while awake can weaken sleep pressure. Late-night light exposure can delay circadian timing. When the brain repeatedly associates the bed with wakefulness instead of sleep, a feedback loop forms that sustains insomnia. A useful first step for anyone experiencing insomnia is to measure their current sleep pattern. Track bedtime, wake time, total sleep duration, and nighttime awakenings for 1 week. This simple log provides clarity. Many people discover their actual sleep window is shorter and more consistent than they initially believed. One evidence-based method used in sleep medicine is sleep restriction therapy. Despite the name, the goal is not deprivation, but precision. By temporarily limiting time in bed to approximate actual sleep duration, sleep pressure increases. Over time, the brain relearns that bed equals sleep rather than prolonged wakefulness. Another widely supported intervention is stimulus control. The principle is straightforward. The bed should be used only for sleep. If you remain awake for more than about 20 minutes, get up, leave the bedroom, and engage in a quiet, low-light activity. Return only when genuine sleepiness appears. Environmental conditions also influence insomnia. Light exposure is particularly powerful. Even modest artificial light in the evening suppresses melatonin release. If insomnia persists, begin dimming household lighting approximately 90 minutes before bedtime. This allows circadian signals to shift gradually toward sleep readiness. Temperature plays a measurable role as well. Sleep onset is associated with a slight drop in core body temperature. A bedroom temperature between 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, tends to support this physiological transition. Caffeine is another common disruptor. Its average half-life in adults is 5 to 7 hours, meaning a late afternoon coffee may remain active well past midnight. Individuals struggling with insomnia should experiment with stopping caffeine at least 8 hours before their intended bedtime. Physical activity generally improves sleep quality, yet timing matters. Moderate exercise during the day increases slow-wave sleep and strengthens circadian rhythms. However, intense training immediately before bed elevates heart rate, adrenaline, and body temperature, factors that can delay sleep onset. Chronic insomnia frequently involves cognitive hyperarousal. In simple terms, the brain remains alert even when the body is tired. Thoughts about work, health, or the frustration of not sleeping can activate stress circuits that override natural sleep signals. One practical strategy is structured worry scheduling. Set aside 10 minutes earlier in the evening to write down concerns and possible next steps. When the brain attempts to revisit these topics at night, you can remind yourself that they are already documented and will be addressed tomorrow. Breathing techniques can also assist with physiological downregulation. Slow nasal breathing, approximately 4 seconds inhaling and 6 seconds exhaling, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Practiced consistently, this pattern lowers heart rate and encourages the transition from alertness to rest. Digital stimulation remains one of the most underestimated contributors to insomnia. Interactive screens engage attention networks and expose the eyes to blue-enriched light. If evening screen use is unavoidable, reduce brightness, activate night shift modes, and shift toward passive content such as audio. When insomnia persists beyond several months, clinicians often recommend cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Abbreviated CBT-I, this structured program combines sleep scheduling, cognitive restructuring, and behavioral adjustments. Research consistently shows CBT-I produces longer-lasting improvement than medication alone. Sleep medications can be useful in specific circumstances, particularly during acute insomnia triggered by temporary stress or illness. However, they are generally considered short-term tools. Long-term recovery usually depends on restoring healthy behavioral and circadian patterns. The encouraging reality is that insomnia is highly treatable. When individuals align circadian timing, rebuild sleep pressure, stabilize routines, and reduce cognitive arousal, the brain gradually re-establishes a predictable sleep rhythm. Improvement rarely happens overnight, but consistent adjustments typically produce measurable progress. Thank you for spending this time with Night Rhythm. Insomnia may feel unpredictable, yet the science behind sleep regulation is remarkably structured. When we understand the difference between acute disruption and chronic insomnia, and apply evidence-based strategies, the path towards stable rest becomes clearer. Protect your rhythm, adjust deliberately, and allow biology the conditions it needs to restore sleep.